call to order our Tubman LSC regular virtual meeting for February 15, 2023. Meeting is called to order at 6:02 p.m. We will now do roll call. Mr. Hall,
Nicholas Hall, teacher rep.
Ms. Holbert,
Miss Holbert, teacher rep.
Lori. Lori excused herself from the meeting. Cynthia,
Cynthia Chernoff, parent rep.
Cindy, Robert,
Rob Dagnew, community rep.
Ms. Brooks, Michael,
Michael Weinstock, parent rep.
Sarah,
Sarah Ogato, parent rep.
Principal Gibson, May,
May McGannon, student rep.
and Emiliano, parent rep, LSC chair. So we have established quorum for our meeting for tonight. Our next item is the approval of the agenda. I motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Michael?
I either wanted to add a discussion point or just take note that maybe we'll have a little bit longer of a follow-up on the PPLC committee in particular. But the topic I'd like to ask a few questions on the last meeting and in specific regard to the literacy curriculum and just some feedback I'd gotten from parents. So either as a discussion item that we can add wherever or just, a little bit more follow-up on the PPLC update.
Michael, today we have people from the network that are going to present about, are going to give us information related to this. I don't know if the questions will be answered. However, we can put that as an action item next step for further discussion if you understand that your questions are not answered or any other question that may arise. So I would encourage for all of us to hear what that presentation will be, and then we can ask other questions after the PPLC report if you understand that that's how you want to proceed, or if not, we'll add it as an action, as an item in our next agenda so we can further discuss. If you're okay with that, I mean,
sure.
That's my proposal.
Sure, yeah,
maybe your questions will get answered, maybe not, I don't know. But that's what I propose in terms of not amending the agenda to add it specifically because maybe it's not needed. Mr. Hall, I don't know if you want to add something.
Yes, Eliana, I was just going to add on to that. So Emily and I will be providing the PPLC report as we usually do. This month, as you'll see, it is a little more in depth than previous months because we have gotten feedback that more details are wanted. And yes, I believe we have a data presentation today. So again, I'm hoping we'll be covering a lot of what the questions might be. And then obviously we can ask more questions. The council can ask more questions during that part of the agenda.
Michael, I don't know if you're okay with that or if you still want a motion to add it. I'm okay with that, but I just wanted you to have the context.
No, that works for me. I guess more wanted to make sure everyone's like amenable to more questions if it's appropriate, if they're unanswered.
Yeah, if there's questions that are still unanswered after today, after both the PPLC report and the presentation we're gonna have, we can for sure add it as a specific item for our next agenda.
Perfect, thanks.
Any other discussion? We vote. Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Halbert?
Yes.
Cynthia?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Ms. Brooks? Michael?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Principal Gibson? May?
Yes.
It's a yes from me too. I do want to note that when we did roll call, Cindy, I think, lost her connection because she was getting home. but she is in the meeting. Our next point in the agenda is approval of minutes.
Just real quick, is anyone absent?
Yeah, Lori is not here and Ms. Brooks is not here and Principal Gibson. Okay, thank you, Cindy. Our next point is the approval of the minutes. We have the minutes from the 2 meetings ago. Since our last meeting was kind of like a special meeting, we are going to provide like a summary of what was discussed on that meeting, but it's not available today for us to vote. But we would be voting on, as I said, 2 meetings ago. We all did receive that one. Is there any? I motion to approve the minutes.
A second.
Is there any discussion about them, Mr. Hall?
Just to clarify, we're voting on the January minutes, right?
That's correct.
Okay, because we also still have to vote on the December ones, which we received. So just so we know, so this vote is for January.
This
because we
vote is
also
for
have to vote-
January because that's my bad that it included on
Okay,
to vote on this one.
and then we'll vote on December because we
Yeah.
got those two. So okay,
Yes. So first, let's vote on the January ones. Thank you, Mr. Hall, for clarifying. Motion to approve January minutes. Cynthia second. That was a discussion. We vote. Mr. Hall.
yes,
Ms. Hallberg.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Cynthia.
Yes.
Cindy.
Yes.
Robert.
Yes.
Lori. Ms. Brooks. Michael.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Principal Gibson. May.
Yeah.
And it's a yes from me too. I now motion to approve the minutes from the December meeting. Anyone second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Cindy. Any discussion? We vote. Mr. Hall,
yes,
Ms. Holbert,
Yes.
Lori, Cynthia,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Robert,
Yes.
Ms. Brooks, Michael,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Principal Gibson, May,
Yes.
and it's a yes for me too. Both minutes are approved, January and December. Thank you, Mr. Hall, again. Our next point are the reports. We start with the school report. AP Moore, if you're here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share the Tubman updates for February. Just 1 second. Could everyone see the screen? Yes. No.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Tubman LSC updates for Wednesday, February the 15th, 2023. We have our mission, our vision, and tonight our updates will consist of our monthly reports for IB, the counselor, the case manager, PPLC. We also have our network ISOs, Merrick Van Ellis and Crystal Martinez, who will be given our Tubman MOY data review. And then I will come back with some additional updates for the financial transactions, as well as things that has been happening around the school. So first, we're going to have our IB report. I'm not sure if Ms. Perillis or Ms. Benson is on. Okay, I'll go ahead and take care of the report for IB. Students in MYP year 1 through 3 came together on Friday, January 13th for a celebration of learning for the second quarter. During their middle school house learning celebrations, students played various board games, and they also attended an assembly to celebrate their total house points. On Wednesday, January 18th, there was the National Thank You Day at Tubman with the Bulldog Buddies. They came together and they wrote notes of gratitude to teachers, staff, and some of their Bulldog Buddies. This week, we are participating in our Random Acts of Kindness Week. And this is another activity that is being shared with the Bulldog Buddies, and also Read Across America Day and will take place in March. On January 19th, NYP Year 3 students visited the Logan Center for the Arts Young Critics Program in collaboration with the University of Chicago. On January 20th, Jenny Vincent and Michelle McNally traveled to Los Angeles to attend an IB conference, participating in preparing for the program evaluation. As you know, our NYP evaluation will take place May 24th through the 26th of this year. On January 30th, our district IB program specialist visited Tubman, and we did a walkthrough throughout the school looking at various components of our IB program. And then the NYP teachers and specialists will continue to work on the next phase of the evaluation process, which is the self-study parts 1 and 2, and examining and highlighting our work over the last 5 years. Next report will be our counselor updates.
Good evening, Counselor Ms. Beaker. Continuing with social emotional learning K2 whole class lessons using the curriculum overcoming obstacles. And this theme was, for this lesson, was resolving conflict. For academics, 3-5, the whole class lesson, I use success bound curriculum, and we've been working on setting goals. And then for career 6-8, I use the Naviance platform, and the activity for this visit was beliefs, values, attitudes, career interest inventory. Continuing meeting biweekly with the behavioral health team to review referrals, data, assign support to students and teachers as needed. Community partnerships, Colgate Bright Smiles visited our first grade classrooms yesterday, actually. They came and they're going to be sending us some toothbrushes and toothpaste. Calm Classroom, we're doing student-led morning practice announcements daily. In the morning, the students are leading those. And then second step, we just got access to Mind Yeti. So working with K5 on incorporating that into the classroom when it's a digital second step. And now we have the digital access to Mind Yeti, which is exciting. So that's my update.
Thank you, Ms. Beaker. Next, we're going to have Ms. Rosenberg with our case manager updates.
Good evening, everyone. So exciting news. We had our new OT start a couple weeks ago now. His name is Hernan Perez. He is at our schools Monday through Wednesday. And so students who receive occupational therapy services will be hearing from us over the next couple of weeks as he is getting acclimated to our school and meeting our students and finalizing his schedule. So just wanted to give you guys that update. We are having morning special ed teacher meetings. I have weekly case manager meetings, and so I'm meeting with teachers so that we can discuss what is going on during those meetings, as well as just check in and update on any information that we need to be updated on with each other. This is something that we have recently started based on the fact that we haven't really been able to all get together. And so it's been a nice way for us to have space to meet and discuss what we need to discuss. As I've stated in the past, Tuesdays are our team days, but unfortunately based on scheduling, a lot of our meetings are having to happen outside of Tuesdays, as well as I'm teaching in the morning and then there's other responsibilities. And so everyone's flexibility has been really appreciated this school year. And then as well attending monthly MTSS meetings with the network. Ms. Brown is doing the interventionist meetings, and then we are facilitating MTSS this school year. We are having weekly clinicians meetings on team days, as well as Ms. Speaker stated, doing behavioral health team meetings. So those are my updates. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Rosenberg. Next, we're going to have our PPLC update. Ms. Holbert and Mr. Hall.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, AP Moore. Yeah, so for PPLC updates, basically I'm going to kind of go through clarifying some misconceptions about what the PPLC is and actually does. We realized after the last couple of updates that not everyone was really clear on what the PPLC is and like what our role is in connection to the LSC and administration, and then kind of guiding everyone through our process so far this year as pertains to literacy. And so here we go. So the PPLC is an advisory committee. And so obviously we develop and present recommendations to the school administration and to the local school council and update everyone on matters relating to educational program. And that can include curriculum, CIWP, implementation and development, staff professional development, budgetings. But again, we are just advising. We don't have any decision-making power. So for example, if we look at last year, we spent the bulk of the year looking at what new math curriculum to select. And once we'd made that decision as a PPLC, based on all the feedback we got from staff and administration, we presented that to administration with the cost, and then administration figured out how we were going to afford to pay for it and professional development and all that entailed. So again, when we're looking at these programs, we're kind of looking at what is the ideal program for the best learning of our students. We then make that recommendation to the administration, who then works with all the different stakeholders to make sure that can happen. So as far as this year, our main concern was trying to address this curricular gap in Tier 1 foundational literacy skills, and that is principally in phonemic awareness and phonics. So if we look at what teachers are using up until now, for the most part, we have Lucy Calkins units of study in reading and in writing, and we adopted those. Writing was 2010, I want to say, and reading was 2012. So it's nothing new at Tubman. And then classroom teachers are supplementing for other areas of literacy to try and make it a balanced literacy curriculum with other programs such as Words Their Way and Foundations and Just Words. So kind of trying out different programs. But we don't, as of now, have like a set program that covers everything. So that's what we're trying to do this year, is kind of fill in those gaps. So we examined data, and you'll hear a lot about the data later on, but it is STAR 360, iReady, IAR, those are kind of the standard ones. All of that gets put into a program, placeholder, not a placeholder, can't remember the word, into Branching Minds. Help me out, Emily, if you can.
Platform.
A platform, thank you. Branching Minds, which then allows us to identify, okay, different tiers and down to specific areas in reading and writing and phonics and math and everything you can think of. And so then based on that, we can kind of identify Tier 1 students, Tier 2, Tier 3, what support students need, how many times a week, with which interventionists, and so on. So obviously we saw there was this gap in instruction of foundational skills, particularly as pertain to phonics and phonemic awareness. So we obviously got a big database from all the grade level teams and discussions on, you know, what materials we're using, what do we need to update for this school year, what literacy practices do we see as working or need improvement. We administration has been sending for the last 18 months or so teachers to different trainings. As you'll see, a lot of it is the Wilson reading system. So that includes foundations. That's the K through, I just gone blank, Emily, 3, 2. I know for sure we do K through 2 program. And then Wilson Just Words is 3rd and up. And I apologize if I misspoke on that. And the Wilson reading system is kind of the whole thing. And that's kind of an intensive multi day over several months training. And then other professional development, Chicago Literacy Group, iReady, Math and Reading Administration. So the iReady we did adopt mid-year for reading this year. So I believe that'll be in the data presentation following mine. So at our last PBLC, we had invited Merrick Van Ellis and Crystal Martinez, who are 2 of our instructional support leaders for the network, and they work with the Department of Literacy. And we had invited them to present, okay, what are some options that we could consider to fill that gap in foundational skills? And so the 3 that they presented to us were the Foundations Just Work, so the Wilson programs, Hegarty, and then also Skyline. And all 3 of these programs are being used by other CPS schools, so nothing is brand new to CPS. And so what we wanted to do was just an overview, kind of to see where, what was available. And then what we decided as a PPLC was further discussions are going to be in the grade level teams that it affects the most. And we're working on getting the instructional support leaders to come to those specific grade level team meetings to discuss. And that way the teachers can really look into depth, get in-depth answers, get samples, really looking at it to then allow us to make that recommendation for what we will use in the future. So again, we're shifting kind of a lot of the discussion because we can't do it all just in once a month, 1 hour meeting. So a lot of that is going to be in our instructional leadership team meeting, in our grade level team meetings. And then once we get everyone's feedback, we will then make that recommendation. And our goal is to obviously make that recommendation sometime in the spring so we can get ready for what PD is needed for next year and so on. So that is that. Our next meeting is tomorrow. And our focus tomorrow will primarily be starting to look at CIWP, where we're at, and also how our new math curriculum is going this year, kind of looking at that since it's our first year implementing it. And that's it for now.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Next, we're grateful to have our Network 4 team here with us this evening. We have our chief, Dr. Asaf, and our 2 ISOs, Merrick Van Ellis, along with Crystal Martinez. And I think I saw our data strategist on the call, Majid, as well. So we're going to turn it over into our Network 4 team. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Good evening, everyone. My name is Merrick Van Ellis, like Ms. Moore said. I'm an instructional support leader for Network 4. We will be discussing data when it pertains to platforms like Branching Minds and assessment platforms like iReady and Star 360, as well as go over instructional core walk data, where the network is trying to promote instructional practice shifts to improve the overall experience for teachers and students. So starting us off, we're going to take a look at the tier movement report. Just to give a little background knowledge, the tier movement is a comparison of student performance across 2 windows as a leading indicator of academic progress. In the content area of reading, Tubman has an overall increase in tier movement of tier 1 students, increasing from 69% to 75%. A positive reduction in tier 2 and tier 3 respectively, with tier 2 going from 13% to 12%, and tier 3 from 16% to 12%. Now we can take a look at it and break it down by tier. Next slide, please. So if we're looking at it by tier, looking at tier one, the green triangle, out of 135 students, 130 of them stayed in that same tier, with only 5 moving to tier three and none moving in tier, only 5 moving to tier two and none moving in tier three. Next slide. So the tier movement report in math pretty much stayed neutral, with tier one starting at 74% in the beginning of the year and currently hovering at 73% in the middle of the year. Same thing going on with tier two, going from 13% to 14%, and tier three staying at 12%. Breaking that down by tier, looking at tier one, the green triangle again, out of 185 students, 167 of those students stayed in that same tier, with 14 moving to tier two and 4 moving in tier three. Now we're going to talk about the platform Star 360. This assessment primarily speaks to grades 3 through.
I am so sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Bernadette. Please explain to the people on the call who might not know how the tiers are created.
Chief, you were breaking up. What were you saying?
If you can explain what the tiers are, how are they composed? Why do you have tiers?
I think if you don't mind, Chief, I can, because you're cutting out. For the purpose of the people that are here that don't understand what the tiers are, if you could further explain what the tiers are and what does it mean when one student moves to another tier, etc. Just for people who are joining us that don't understand that concept, I want everyone to understand what this means.
No problem, no problem, no problem at all. So our tier one, those are students performing 50%, they're performing in a 50 percentile rank or above when it comes to um, standardized assessments. We're looking at the Star 360 platform as well as the iReady platform. Those pretty much are leading indicators when it comes to the performance level of students. So those tier one, when we're talking about tier one, those are our high flyers where students are performing at grade level or above grade level. Tier two, when we're talking about tier two, that means that students are on the cusp of reaching that first tier where they should be operating at grade level or above. And tier three, that's where we're going to need a little bit of support with those particular students. Those particular students aren't performing at grade level expectations. Does that clear it up a little bit more? Thank you. Awesome, awesome. So taking a look at grades 3 through 8th, where we're talking about the Star 360 platform, Tubman had an overall increase in the performance of their students, going from 70% to 75%. Math relatively stayed the same. We're talking about beginning of the year, students perform 71% of the students performed at or above benchmark, which I just spoke about. That means basically grade level expectations, with a 1% increase to 72% in the middle of the year. Now, taking a look at iReady, this is our K through 2 population. Tubman is performing significantly well when we're talking about comparison to other networks, other schools in our network. So 8% of the students are performing grade level below expectation. 32% are performing one grade level below, 21% is performing at grade level, and 38% is performing above grade level. Now, let's take a look at that. in comparison to our other schools in the network. So compared to our other schools in the network, Tubman is performing a little bit better than our other schools. Relatively speaking, that red category, Tubman had 8%. Other network schools are about 11%. When we're talking about that yellow quadrant, I think Tubman was at 20 something percent, and the other schools in the network are about 38%. Tubman with students performing in the green, that's on grade level, they were about 31%, and the network schools are operating at 16%. And that last category of above grade level, Tubman was at 38%, and the rest of the schools in our network are performing at 35%. So now I'm going to hand it off to my colleague Crystal to explain the rest of these slides, and then we're going to talk about the instructional core walk, where the network is trying to push instructional practice when in terms of making the learning experience better for everyone.
Thank you, Merrick. So I'd like to take a moment to look at this annual typical growth number. And I just want to remind everyone that the typical growth is the average annual growth for a student at their grade level and their baseline placement level. And if you can see, Tubman, the mean is at 42%. So this really means that on average, because this is a middle of year assessment, we're looking for students to be at 50% or above. So Tubman is at about 8 points below the annual where we need people to be. Okay. So one thing we do also want to note is that the mid or above grade level category is improving. Beginning of year, it was at 18%, and middle of year, it's at 32%. Okay. All right, let's see how the network is doing. When you take a look at the network, you can see that the red category, the 3 grades or below, is definitely bigger than what Tubman had. But when you look at your green categories, the network, comparing to the network, it's a little lower, right? So we definitely see growth here. All right, let's go to the next one. This one is exciting. So the network is partnering with Tubman's ILT, and we have meetings to do rigor walks. And on these walks, we're looking at different criteria. This is the heat map from your beginning of your walk. And these are the questions that we're looking at when we go into the classrooms, okay? As a team, we have usually about 3 different teams, usually 3 people, maybe 4 people, go into the classroom, and we are observing what is a standard-based student evidence that we're seeing, from lesson learning targets to taxonomy levels. If we could go to that next one, that was BOI. This is MOI. We start to see the progress from both of the walks, okay? And so these are the questions for the standard-based student assessment. And we're going to give you beginning of your data and middle of your data, so you can kind of see where we're progressing. Let's go to the next one. This is the beginning of your heat map to see how is everyone organized to achieve the standards, right? So our students interacting with groups, if they are experiencing in the groups, are they experiencing productive struggle? Are they using academic vocabulary? Are students challenging each other with questions? Does the task require all students to be engaged? There's a lot of questions that we're looking at. Let's look at that middle of year. And you can see the difference. So we're showing you all the data from each classrooms that we saw. Okay. The last part, let's go to the next one, is to see how students and teachers are monitoring their actions within a lesson, right? So we asked to see, are teachers tracking evidence, and is it observable, and how are students monitoring their own progress? This is beginning of year. Let's go to middle of year. you can start to see the changes. It's very exciting work. This work will continue. We have an end of year walk also, but it's not just about the walks. We have mini walks in between. We're supporting the teachers, and of course, grade levels, however it is that we can to get where we need to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Merrick, Crystal, and Dr. Asaf. Next, our school updates. On February 3rd, staff engaged in full day PD. The PD covered the IB policies, one of our ILT collabs, the IAR tests, COM Classroom, and Cozy Corners. Today, Principal Curie walked the building with a representative from Encouraging Arts to get various quotes on improvements and signage needed in the school. Our ready results were sent home on Tuesday. The MOY evaluations were done for all of our MSRPs, and I'm happy to report that our intercom system is up and running. We got that repaired last week. Also, we had a staff meeting to review the ELSA, the evacuation, lockdown, shelter in place, severe weather, and all clear drills with all staff, with an emphasis on our soft and hard lockdown drills, as well as resource videos were shared with staff regarding student-friendly videos that can be shared within the classroom. And then on March the 24th, high school offers will be released and information will be sent to families from our counselor in regards to how to access this information. And Principal Carey wanted me to report that she was not able to get all of the financial transactions onto the slide, but I do have a handout here that she gave me to share. And in regards to the transactions, on January 17th, we purchased a Hoyer lift for our students to transport them back and forth for restroom, and that was for $428.84. On, let's see here, another transfer on January the 17th, it was for $600. We sent 4 primary teachers to literacy professional development, targeting small group instruction, phonemic awareness, and phonics instructions, phonics assessments to drive instruction. On February the 6th, there was a transfer for $836.79. That was moved to cover the rental fee of 3 copiers with Konica. Let's see. On February the 14th, there was a transfer for $660 for field trips. The field trip is going to take place on February the 28th, so some funds will move there. And then the last transfer I have here was for $220 on February the 6th. And again, this was funds were moved to the student transportation line for field trips. She did want me to encourage the budget committee to please reach out. Feel free to schedule a meeting with her and she can go over in depth those transfers with the local school council, as well as we put into the LSC folders the 115 fund summary along with the internal checking account. And that will be all for our February Tubman updates. Thank you.
Thank you so much, AP Moore.
You're welcome.
Cynthia.
I just had a quick question about the intercoms. I mean, I've been hearing them being tested. They all seem to work really well throughout the school. I was just wondering if they work in the gym, because I remember hearing reports that that before the drill, they or before the incident, not a drill, that the gym doesn't get intercom reception there.
I will have to check with our engineer, Mark,
Okay.
to find out that answer, and then I will get back with you on that, Cynthia. Thank you.
Okay, and then also, just because we were talking about lockdown drills and things, I worked with Mr. Laughlin this week and last week, and through some generous donations, we've got a bunch of books that we put in a basket called Tough Topics, that can be resources for parents and kids, covering topics like grief and loss and big feelings after very scary things happen. Those are in the library.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for that, and Mr. Laughlin. Michael?
Yeah, thanks. I had a few questions on the data. I guess, first of all, I was curious if if the LSC could get a copy of it. And then maybe we could have separate follow-ups if there's any more detailed questions. But in particular, what I was really interested in understanding was how these distributions that you were showing and the growth you were showing, how that compares with students before the pandemic, and understanding, how I anticipate the scores to be lower now. So I'm interested to understand how that's mapping to changes in the classroom or changes in how you're teaching or how you're suggesting teachers teach, since that's from the network, something along those lines. And then I also had a question about two of the slides you put up showing improvements in the classroom, from beginning year to end of year, or sorry, beginning year to mid-year, where it was the kind of KPIs with the different colors. There was one classroom that was strongly disagree, all vertical. And then on the next slide, there was a different classroom that was all strongly disagree. So was that the same classroom and it just was it was class 3 on one slide and class 9 on a different slide? Or, what's kind of going on with that? As a parent, I don't really like seeing that there's a classroom marked like that. So I just would like a little more information.
When we had our BOY walk, it was different classrooms from the MOY. So in regards to the particular classroom, I don't have that information because the way that we get the data from the network, they black out the classrooms that we visited. It's just overall school data. But we did not visit the same classrooms from beginning of the year in MOY. And in regards to the reports, I do apologize. I did put the LSC updates in the LSC folder quite late, but it is there. Sorry.
Perfect, thanks. Do you have a sense of how those scores can compare to previous years? Does the network have data on that?
Well, in regards to the different assessments, STAR, this is our second year with the STAR Renaissance assessment. So I don't believe there will be any data comparisons for pre-pandemic. In iReady, this is our first year with iReady.
Okay, thank you. I have a few other questions, but I'll wait until we loop back around.
Thank you, Michael. Sarah? You're muted.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for the reports, and just really informative, and just always impressed by the incredible work that's happening. I have a follow-up question. I'll tag on to some of the inquiry that Michael was making about the data. Just questions of clarity. With the MTSS report, it's universal, and I was really appreciated seeing the breakdown like that. It was mentioned there was 135 students. Did I hear that number correctly, or is that representative of when we think about the tier? Are we looking, does this cover all of our students, or all of our students, a part of the MTSS? And am I making the correct assumption that we have 135 students enrolled? I think I'm very wrong about that. But just want that point of clarity around there. And then also, just for folks who may not understand, like BOY, MOY, could that acronym be spelled out? And then data gap. In terms of the really kind of looking at breaking the data down a little bit more, would we have an opportunity to kind of better understand, how those gaps we know exist within our school? Is there any work that's been done to kind of differentiate some of that data by age, gender, or ethnicity? Just curious about that. So those are my data questions, and I'll pause and I'll circle back as Michael would, because I did have a comment and a question for the incredible work that our school counselors doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
In regards to the number of students that test, that was for grades 3 through 8. And so that breakdown of that branching minds was from the students that tested from those particular grades. And then we have a breakdown of the iReady data. And in regards to the demographics and breaking the data down even further, internally, we do have access to that data. But at this time, there has not been any discussion in regards to how that's going to be shared with the community. Under the leadership of our chief, our guidance is coming from the network in regards to the information that we're sharing in our data presentations.
Thank you, AP Moore. I saw.
Oh, and really quick, BOY, MOI, the acronym breakdown. Thanks.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry. Emily did put it in the chat. BOY stands for beginning of year. MOY is middle of year. And our, if you hear EOY, that's end of year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, AP Moore. Are there any other questions related to the report, Michael? You're muted, Michael.
Sorry, thank you. In terms of the number of kids in one of the tiers, was one of those right where it said there were 274 getting some tier support in math?
Is Merrick still on?
Am I allowed to answer? I was at a meeting today that we looked at this information.
Absolutely, yes.
Sorry. Yeah, so when you look, and I think Sarah, you mentioned seeing the discrepancy in K through 2 for the first fall did not do iReady. And so for reading, it says 170 something because it doesn't include K through 2, but they did do it in the wintertime. And so that's where it went from like 175 to 200 and something, because we now have like data for all students for reading, where we didn't have that data from the beginning of the year just in reading. And so in math, we have equal numbers almost because we had kids transfer in. And so that's where the numbers are like 273 or 275. So there's a little discrepancy in there just because we had kids come in. And it's more equal in math because all students in K through 2 did iReady in the fall and did iReady again in the winter time. And then all 3rd through 8th students did STARS 360 in the beginning of the year and in the middle of the year. That's where the data is. And then numbers wise, all students are listed in either tier 1, 2, or 3. Tier 1, as Merrick said, is like the kids who are at or above grade level. So it's students who might be like, when you get the parent report, it would say at or above or on watch. Those are considered tier 1 students who are getting all classroom instruction at level and are scoring at level. And then you have the students who are in the yellow, which is the intervention, which is like students who are in tier 2 that might need a little more support. And that's also being done within the classroom. And there are students that are a little behind that might just need a little support from their classroom teacher or like an interventionist that's working with that teacher on skills. And then tier 3 students are students who are below grade level and that are needing like more severe interventions. And that's usually done by either Miss Brown, who is our interventionist this year, or it could be done by an interventionist that works with the grade level, or a special ed teacher in the room. And so so all students are in that data. It just depends on where they lie within the specific tier.
So one really quick clarification. So does that tier 1 also map to MTSS tier 1? So if you're a tier 1 student, you're not getting intervention necessarily, but yours. Okay.
Yeah, so tier 1 is in classroom. So it's just like what the in classroom students are getting that's being done by the gen ed teacher. Tier 2 is also mainly done by the classroom teacher. It just might be like an extra check-in or an extra small group support. Like if kids are doing independent reading in the classroom, a classroom teacher might pull a small group to during that time because they just need a little extra push throughout the day. And then tier 3 is our students who are needing like really either a 1-to-2 teacher ratio. And those are the students that are being seen by Ms. Brown on a daily basis.
Perfect. Thank you.
And just also mindful, as I'm also the case manager, that these scores also include our students who have IEPs. And so it's like sometimes it also is for students who are getting special ed support. They're also included in this data.
Thank you, Ms. Rosenberg. Mr. Hall, I saw you had your hand up.
I actually think Rebecca answered most of, did.
Cindy?
So I'm good. Sorry.
You're muted, Cindy.
I'm just wondering if we're going to have any kind of broader conversations around budget and budgeting. I know that we talk about transfers and sort of like day to day, but I'm just curious what kind of conversations we're going to have moving down the road in terms of our school population and what we can sort of start trying to predict in terms of our annual budget.
Thank you for that question, Cindy. Someone will answer that in a second, but I see that we have Mr. Van Ellis here again. So I don't know if there's a specific question that someone of the council wants to ask about the data that was presented. Sarah, I see that you had your hand up.
I'll just, I don't know if we had the answer to that question, but did we get a sense of if that some of the slide decks would be shared with the group? I don't know if this question is related to the data point that was shared, but maybe there's some connectivity there. Do we have a sense of the timeline for when we can move towards a full implementation around our balanced literacy curriculum?
Sarah, in the Google Drive, you can see the slides of the presentation that AP Moore shared. The other question, I would leave Ms. Moore.
Thank you.
As we get the recommendations from our PPLC, we will make sure that the information is shared with the entire Tubman community in regards to the directions we will be going for with the literacy program.
Michael? You're muted, Michael.
Sorry. I had some questions on the PPLC update if we are ready to switch gears a little bit from the data. Is that fine? Okay. So I had a few questions, I think 3. So one of them was, I understood that the Skyline curriculum was presented at the last meeting, and I was curious to get kind of a understanding of how the staff reacted to it, if they thought it was good, if they thought it wasn't good, or whatever. The context for this question really is that my understanding is that the network and CPS in total is looking to implement Skyline across the board. It's really a basket of different curriculums to cover all subjects. And I would imagine it's in the pipeline, maybe not next year, maybe not the year after, but I imagine it's in the pipeline long term for all schools. So that I would be very curious to understand what the staff reaction was in that context. And then my other questions were about the PPLC advisory aspect in particular. So this kind of dovetails with budget in that we have a lot of money in our accounts, and I haven't really seen a whole lot of stuff get posed in these meetings this year that we could spend on. And I don't know who should be developing these ideas, but I was curious if if that's part of PPLC, if you've heard ideas from teachers and where they think money could go to effectively, improve learning outcomes, student experience, et cetera. And then my third question was about the gap that you mentioned in the literacy curriculum for Tier 1. So that sounds like it's really the literacy curriculum for just regular classroom instruction. And I wanted to understand that a little bit more in terms of it. The impression I got from the way it was worded is that there's not much that's needed. And I'm having a hard time understanding what that gap is in terms of what needs to be filled. Is it on the teaching side that there's difficulty getting instructions to the students? Is this something that's a result of the pandemic? Is it, and just kind of understanding what that problem statement is a little bit more, and then what's being measured and looked at. And it sounds like you kind of answered that piece of it with the test scores and everything. So I just wanted a little more detail on that too.
Okay.
Ms. Moore, if you don't mind, I can answer that question if that's okay. So from the district's perspective, the promotion of high quality curriculum is the goal, and Skyline is an option for schools to adopt. Now, in Tubman's case, Tubman has the units of study with Lucy Calkins, and they noticed a gap in terms of the foundational skills. So Lucy Calkins speaks to the comprehension component that's needed in the content area of reading, and they noticed a gap when it comes to phonics and phonemic awareness, which the network has been in full support of trying to help them close that gap with showing them options of how to supplement their already in place curriculum. So it's a very layered conversation. Budget wise, I'll let Ms. Moore speak to that. But in terms of that, we're gonna have to figure out like professional development, sending teachers out for training, things of that nature, to try to make sure teachers are well equipped to deliver this supplemental curriculum components that is needed due to the recognition of the gap that they saw.
Mr. Hall?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that. So first, the Skyline. I can't speak for the whole staff. I can only speak for the members who are on PPLC. So again, as Merrick said, we were presented with 3 options. During the meeting, I don't think we made a decision either way. Last year, we had looked at Skyline for math as a PPLC and elected not to go with it. We just felt Envision was better suited to our current students' needs. So we did not choose Skyline last year for math. And so again, that's why it's going to be during the next month. Mr. Van Ellis and will be coming to meet with specifically the primary teachers, looking at these different components, and they'll be able to kind of have the in-depth. I know last year with Skyline for Math, we got to see sample lessons. We got to see how it all worked. So I'm thinking that'll be the same process this year. But again, and I did not feel, and Emily, you can speak to this too, I didn't feel any particular push for Skyline from either Merrick or Crystal. I think it was kind of a great overview of it all. We know it's out there. Is it going to come down the pipeline at this point? We're just dealing with what we're seeing right now and what we think is best for our students. As far as budgeting proposals, so again, once we have a clear idea of what we want to go with, we have started looking at what PD would cost for each one, what materials would cost for each one, but we're not going to propose anything to administration until we have a clear idea on what a recommendation will be. And again, as far as budgeting goes, teachers don't come to PPLC necessarily for budgeting needs. So for example, classroom teachers, as far as reading went, needed updated units of study and updated materials for reading to teach this year, they don't come to PPLC. They went to AIC Carey. AIC Carey is the one who controls the money at our school. And so she went ahead and purchased everything they needed from funds that she knew. So again, like the PPLC, yes, we provide recommendations on PD and ideas of what it'll cost. And many of us are on the ILT and the budgeting committees and help and the leadership team and whatever other teams we have. And so we're kind of all a part of that, but I would say that's not really a PPLC meeting issue. I'm trying to think, was there anything else, Michael?
No, and with the budget in particular, I wasn't limiting that to just the literacy scope. I was just thinking more broadly in terms of, just kind of brainstorming ideas of, how things could be spent in the most beneficial way, I guess.
Okay, yeah. So I would say, it is, we have discussions. Again, if someone comes up with an idea, we're not going to turn it down and we'll talk about it. But again, there's, we can say this sounds like a good idea, but at the end of the day, it is up to AIC Carey and AP Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Yeah, Ms. Moore.
And I just want to try to answer Cindy's question in regards to the budget update. The latest that we received from CPS is we will not be receiving our budgets until after spring break. And they did give us a commitment that any positions that were funded, that was added, like our interventionists and things like that, they will not be cut. But in regards to enrollment, we're waiting to see what those numbers will look like. So we will not have any additional updates regarding the budget until after spring break.
Thank you, AP Moore. Mr. Hall?
Sorry, Eliana. I did want to add, it's just something that came up last month that I wanted to give an update, which was about the OST summer programs. I just remembered that. So I have been informed we are due to receive funds for OST summer programs. When and how much, that is still up in the air. I do know no summer program can start before June 25th. So there is a kind of a blackout date. Nothing can happen in the building as far as summer programs between the end of the school year, June 7th, and June 25th. So any programs that we would possibly offer would not start until June 25th. I just want to put it out there, as I know lots of families are already starting to plan for their summer activities for their children.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Any other?
Ileana, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Ooh, it's my turn. Any other questions about the school report? So our next point is FOT report. I see Patty.
Hi, can you hear me? Am I sideways? Okay, I look sideways for me. All right. Sorry. I don't have anything, no fundraisers this time, but just sent notes of celebration. So I don't know if you guys need me to read through that or what you guys want me to do.
Yes, Patty, please.
Okay. Hang on one. Sorry. Okay. Notes of celebration. Fun run fundraiser in October raised $52,000. Muskie Fest in September raised $4,000. For our dining nights out, the Jenny's one raised $290. The Canes one raised $50. Lou Malnati's raised $132. Chipotle raised $174. Zzz's raised $190, and I can report that the Sip and Dip, or Dip and Sip, sorry, donuts raised $550. The Spiritware first round raised $190, and we are going to be doing a second round in March. The Ever Eve's shopping event raised $325. Popcorn, as of February 8th, has raised just over $6,000. Men's basketball league has it's still ongoing as well, and that one has raised over $1,000. The Building Blocks Toy Store holiday give back, we did raise that $25 gift card to be used as an incentive. The minted holiday season cards raised $300. And our holiday shop, which really wasn't intended to be a fundraiser per se, but we did manage to raise $365 at that event, but it was a really fun event for the students to enjoy. The back to school event was great. The Latinx Indigenous Heritage Month celebration was wonderful. The Fall Fest was a good turnout of families. The fall meet and greet happy hour at Will's, staff and parents and caregivers attended an evening out together, which was great. The staff celebration bingo night at George Street Pub actually ended up raising $110, but that was more of a community building event as well. Winterland Wishes, which was also a community building event and had a lot of staff and families attend. It did also raise $825. FOT sponsored the Subway lunch for staff on report card and conferences day on November 21st. The Assistance Program Fund, which is ongoing, has donated a total of $1,213 this year so far to 4 families in need with the assistance of our school counselor and social worker, sorry. The Middle School Travel Fund, which is the fund that's raised from the popcorn and the men's basketball. We have helped a total of 5 7th grade families and 4 8th grade families for a total of $3,284. We're thinking there'll be about $2,500 more additional requests, according to Ms. Vincent, who is staying on top of it and working with me directly. Upcoming events, we have, as I said, the spring spiritware sales, the continued monthly dine-outs. McDonald's is the next one up on March the 6th. We're hoping to have some staff attend that one and make it more of a community building event. And Portillo's in April. And the I Heart Tubman annual pledge drive is happening right now. And we have raised so far about $12,000 on that. And movie night is coming up March 4th, which is a free event for all families. And we are able to do 2 movies simultaneously, one for middle schoolers in Mr. Hall's music room, and in the gym, we're gonna have for pre-K through 5th grade, a separate movie. And the students will get to vote on the movie this week, and we will announce the winning movies next week. And then we have Teacher Appreciation Week coming up, the week of May 8th, and finally the gala and auction, which is in May of this coming year, May 13th. So sorry, I know it's like just reading off a sheet of paper, but I wanted to share all of our updates. So now I'll be quiet.
Thank you, Patty. It's important to share the good stuff. And thank you to FOT for all you do, guys. Next, we have the fundraisers, the Fine Arts Department. Mr. Hall, about the spring musical.
Sure. So in a regular year, we put on 2 big shows a year, the dance show and the spring musical, and those are our main fine arts fundraisers. So pretty much any money we make at the door in ticket sales goes to funding the next show. So usually the spring musical will fund the next dance show, the dance show, spring musical, and so on. And also gives us some additional funds to buy more supplies for students and instructional materials. This is our first musical in 4 years because of COVID. And so I know when the dance show this year, we would have normally charged. We decided this year, kind of our welcome back to all families. We were just so excited to have an auditorium full of people. We did just make it free of charge. For the spring musical, we would be charging $7 per adult for each ticket, and it is a suggested donation, but that is the plan and something we've done every year up until 2019. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I am going to motion to approve the fundraiser for the spring musical.
A second?
Thank you. Any discussion? We vote. Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Colbert?
Yes.
Lori? Cynthia?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Ms. Brooks? Michael?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Principal Gibson? May?
Yes.
And it's a yes for me too. So the spring musical from the Fine Arts Department fundraiser is approved.
Thank you, everyone.
Next point on our agenda is review and vote of budget and request or transfer request. We did not receive any requests for any transfer for this meeting. Next, we have the committee reports, communication and engagement. Cindy?
Tomorrow at 12:30 is our monthly meeting. Kind of moving forward, things that we're addressing are still sort of looking at student enrollment, recruitment, and marketing of the school. Super important. We need bodies in this beautiful building. We're also looking at addressing and putting more pressure on what is going on with the principal situation. I'm assuming there's still no news, Ileana? I mean,
There's
nothing?
not, but we have that as a point of discussion after public participation today. But
Okay.
there's not.
Okay, but that is also being addressed in committee as well. So, hope that if you can make it, it's the Zoom account is on the school website. So please join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Equity Committee?
Sure. I will talk a little bit about the middle school cafe we hosted in this February 6th, and that was at 10 o'clock in the morning. It was a really lovely conversation. The focus of it was on transitions, supporting successful transitions from middle to high school, and really having parents to kind of lean in and talk about ways around how we support and what are the needs for middle schoolers and making those transitions possible. You know, transitions, as you think about it, that physical transition, that social emotional transition that's being made, moving from one environment to another, social groups, the feelings students have, feelings that adults have around those transitions. And so with that said, one of takeaways that I just wanted to kind of share with the group here at large, and I'll be doing some follow-up with the school counselor and other folks, is, you know, thinking about ways to have conversations, student-led conversations about the transitions that they'll be making, especially our 8th graders, and even preparing our 7th graders, and thinking about our 6th graders as those transitions are happening in the middle school years. The next middle school cafe would be held March 6th at 10 a.m. This would be our morning meeting, and we'll post the theme of that cafe on the website. And we'll also share the dates for the equity committee meetings as well on the website as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Ties. I don't see Lori here.
I can give a quick update.
Thank you, Cynthia.
We've been having monthly meetings via June. We often, but not always, have special guests to discuss topics related to diverse learners at Tubman. Our guest in February was Ms. Beaker, the school counselor. As you already mentioned, an OT has been assigned at Tubman, has started providing minutes, so we're really happy about that. And I'm going to hand it over to Gia for a brief discussion about Calm Corners. And then I'll jump ahead and say that we're tentatively planned for March 20th.
Thank you, Cynthia. Gia?
Hi, I just wanted to jump in and say that the TIES committee is using some of the funding from the Diverse Learner fundraiser that we did last early summer to fund, we're hoping, the base kit for all the column corners in the school. So every teacher is going to hopefully get a box with like everything you need to get started. And where Ms. Beaker can kind of, give more information on this as we go on. We're going to see what people actually need, but we just wanted to make sure there's some equity across the whole school for everybody having access to the basic materials you would need to create this space in the room, and maybe a poster and, the timer and all those things. And then there'll be more things that teachers can request if they want it, special size seating. And Ms. Beaker, I don't know if she's on the call anymore, but she has a lot of ideas for walkthroughs of other schools. Miss Carey's been really supportive. The school she worked at had these, I'm very excited about this because it's kind of a win for everyone, including students who are not currently having IEPs, right? So we wanted to just get it like something that would help the whole school to get started with. And Ms. Beaker does have some ideas for having like a lending library of things that people could get if they had students who wanted them, or to sort of switch things out and keep it interesting. And then we obviously want people to have training on, being able to use this and encouraging students to have a space to go to. And it is, just so people know, considered a tier 1 intervention for SEL. So it's really kind of a win. And I just want to add that we are going to have our first sort of casual family outing on March 12th for TIES, which is going to be at the Garfield Park Conservatory. And we're trying to have different people plan different just times for folks to meet up as a family and hang out in different spaces around the city. And we think our next meeting is on March 20th, but I don't have my notes with me. So I will make sure that that's on the calendar. Don't quote me on that. And I'm hoping to get an actual flyer out so we can get the information into the Tuesday folder for families who don't have easy access to our online communication platforms. And that's all I've got.
Thank you. AB Moore, I see you have your hand raised.
I just want to report that I believe that this falls up under the TIES. In regards to our student diverse learners, we needed an additional diverse learner teacher. So Ms. Rosenberg and we put in the request. It's called parfing for a position with the district. And I am happy to announce that on today, we did receive an email that we were awarded that diverse learner teacher position.
That's great, AP Moore. Thank you for that update. Next, we have the Budget Committee. Michael.
Oh, I think Rob and I actually swapped, but I don't think we have any updates for budget anyway because we haven't met.
Okay. With Principal Evaluation Committee, we're still waiting for guidance specifically of how we're going to do this. I'm going to be very blunt. So there's no update about this. CIWP, conversations have started, but there has not been a formal meeting yet. But we're working on this. Yes, Michael.
Well, we did meet on CIWP already in a small group to talk about it.
Yeah, but like writing and it was more like a brainstorming.
Oh, sure. Yeah. We just, I guess let me just elaborate a tiny bit because I was expecting, I was going to anyway. So like we did meet twice to talk about really more monitoring the current CIWP because as you were mentioning, we can't really do anything for the next one yet, or the one that we have to write or help write. I don't know how to say that properly. And then what we have talked about a little bit was with AP Moore and Ms. Carey were about getting some of the stuff that's happening inside the school communicated out to parents. And we thought that LSC is a good venue for that because there's a lot of work that's occurring to implement the current CIWP, and it maps to a lot of things that are happening. For example, the PD training that AP Moore commented on with the ILT collab. That was, if I remember right, I'm hopefully not misspeaking, that was focused more around social emotional learning, and that involved input from students, that involved input from other teachers, and that mapped to like a whole day professional development, which was really great to hear. And we're hoping to get more information like that relevant to looking at the current CIWP out, so that the community understands how much hard work is actually happening at the school.
Thank you, Michael. The LGBTQIA committee, I believe they haven't met, and Lori is not here tonight, so there's no report. Robert, public participation.
Absolutely. We've got 3 folks signed up. We can drop their names in the chat in just a moment. I'll go through the spiel and then call on folks and share times. But members of the public are welcome to make comments and ask questions, but they must sign in to participate. The public is called upon to speak in the order they sign in. The public is kindly requested to limit their comments and questions to 3 minutes. Based on the comments or questions, the principal may address some concerns directly and, if necessary, create an action step for the LSC to follow up with the involved parties at a future date. While the LSC will do its best to address any comments or questions, when necessary, more time may be needed to adequately address a particular concern. So the first individual that we have up today is Laura Franz.
Hey guys. Okay. Hi everyone. Sorry, I'm just getting my thing up. I'm here again, and just interesting seeing that data. So especially be interested to see it parsed down a little bit more, but you know, K through 2 was good to have some actual reading data on, and it's kind of like what we've been saying is about 41% were grade one grade level or 2 grade levels below. 8% was, but together it was 41%. So it's kind of what we've been saying, like 40 to 50% of the kiddos kind of left behind. So unfortunately, the statement's a little more negative. I've advocated for the past 2 years by specifically shining a light on the problem with the literacy curriculum itself. But sadly, I've come to the realization it's more than just that. There's a problem with the process. What was presented to the wider community is something different than what happened, at least in my eyes. And I think that's really important in a more general sense. We were told that the school was going to embark on and spend the year doing a literacy deep dive, told that this couldn't be rushed. We had to let the process unfold. However, it turns out that the updated Lucy Collins curriculum was purchased in November by administration, purchased with the intention of it being used this current year as staff had little to no materials available to them, as well as continuing to be used moving forward. So essentially there was no deep dive, and that plan, if there was ever really one, was thrown out early on, it seems like. Although this development was never shared until the latest PPLC meeting in January, only after we raised questions about budget purchases. The PPLC is an advisory group together with the admin, and I know that it's the admin's ultimate decision, decided that because it's an IB authorization year, the first year of new math curriculum and no lead principal, that it was not feasible to overhaul their current practices. What they are deciding on is which foundational skills programs to adopt. And while this is a very positive upgrade to the current practices, it is ill-informed to think that adding a phonics patch is enough. The problem with Lucy's curriculum isn't just that it was missing the basic foundational skills, it also lacked other essential components like knowledge building, rich vocabulary, and explicit writing instruction. You can do a quick search on EdReports to confirm what I said. Hopefully, fingers crossed, those issues have been improved, but the updated curriculum hasn't been independently reviewed yet. And unfortunately, I think Mr. Hall hit the nail on the head when at the end of the PPLC public participation, follow-up question by a parent was attempted. That question was denied, as he stated that this isn't a back and forth, in case that wasn't made clear. I thought it was rude, but he's right. It has never been a back and forth. He just finally said the quiet part out loud. We were also requested by VP Moore to cease communication during an email thread where we were simply asking questions about how this new curriculum purchase would impact the process of the PPLC. But at Tubman, it isn't a back and forth. My children were failed by this current curriculum. It's why I pulled them and why I continue to show up and discuss the problem at every meeting that I can. When you have to spend thousands of dollars on intensive summer school, weekly reading tutors, or neuropsych testing, when they can't join fun after school programs because they have to be home for school tutors instead, when it impacts their self-esteem, you want to do everything in your power to make sure it doesn't happen to another kid and their family, because it doesn't have to. That's the saddest and most maddening part. It didn't have to be like this. There's a better way out there. Yes, it's a tougher path, but it's a path that benefits all children and harms none. And it's grounded in science and research. An opportunity for impactful change was missed. I'm sure some of you will feel that I'm too negative, but after 2 years of advocating for change and running into walls, I'll admit that yes, I'm upset at this outcome. Although I will never apologize for saying these hard truths when they have lifelong consequences on children. And I don't doubt that the school is trying its best under these very challenging circumstances, but sometimes it's life. And in this specific case, the best just isn't enough. The kids deserve better.
Thank you, Laura. Next is Dana Carmen.
Hi, wow, that's going to be really hard to follow. I just wanted to say thank you for clarifying what PPLC does and what the limitations of it are. We hear you. I'd also like to say thank you to Dr. Asif for attending. I hope she's still on the call. Yes, she is. Thank you for attending. I know that you have attended the ODLSS dyslexia committee meetings that I also attend, so you're aware of the initiatives that the district is taking with regard to foundational literacy. I just wanted to go back and clarify a couple things that were erroneous so that the recording is accurate, which is that Wilson Reading System is not an umbrella term. Wilson Reading System is a intensive interventional program only. Wilson is a company that makes programs and curriculums, including Wilson Reading System, and Foundations and Just Words are programs that are based on the Wilson Reading System. So Foundations is a K through 3 tier 1 curriculum, and Just Words is an intervention tier 2 for 4th through 12th. So I just wanted to be really clear about that because that is how they should be used. I also just wanted to clarify, it wasn't mentioned in the PPLC report that the units of study, what I'm going to term 2.0, the newest version of it, was in fact purchased by Tubman in December. That was confirmed by Principal Carey for close to $6,700. So there is a new curriculum in the building. It is just an update to an already, problematic curriculum. In fact, ISL representatives who were here tonight mentioned at the presentation at PPLC that curriculum should be favorably reviewed by Ed Reports, which units of study, as Laura just mentioned, isn't. So I guess my question for the network is, are we still allowing schools to use it and why? As she mentioned, 2.0 hasn't been reviewed yet, but it has been purchased and to our knowledge, it is being used, or at least Principal Carey did confirm that all materials purchased would be used. In that same email dated January 12th, she also said, and I quote, "I'm in the process of ordering Haggerty materials as well." And so I guess I just wanted to ask if we were ordering Haggerty materials before that network presentation, and if we were, why did we need that network presentation if Haggerty is going to be the supplement? And then regarding data, just wondering why it wasn't broken out by grade level and why it wasn't presented also by our administration to the parents in a wider presentation so that more parents could access it. I'm at another Network 4 school. Typically, this is a presentation done by administration. I can also say with certainty that compared to that other Network 4 school, Tubman's data is not favorable. So I'd love to see a breakout, since that was brought up by network reps of the schools. And maybe that will be contained in the report card. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Dana. And last is Molly Conway Alvarez.
Robert, Molly wrote in the chat that she has to step away and will email her questions.
Thank you. So that closes public participation for today then.
Thank you, Robert. The next point in our agenda is discussion and vote on official LSC response to CPS status update. We all know the timeline of the situation in our school. At this point, there's no point in going back and forth on that. As you know, we got a response from CPS Legal saying that they understood that we were anxious um, but that um, there was still no conclusion for the investigation. For my part, the word anxious is not even the word, but I found it kind of disrespectful that they used that word for us, because we've been a more than patient community. And again, I've said these same words to the chief, to AP Moore, to Principal Carey. We've been very patient. We've been very respectful. We've of the process, of the people involved and everything. But our kids, our school, our staff deserve better. So after that response, I wanted to discuss very candidly with all the council. Uh, I feel like at this point, our ask needs to be a little bit stronger. Our ask needs to be more direct. And we need help also from the community to join us in that ask, which I know there's been a lot of community members that have also written emails, letters, etc., to CEO Martinez down. um, so I just wanted to open up the discussion on how everyone feels, which I can kind of anticipate what the answers will be, but I wanted it to be out there and for the community to listen to what brings us to our next step. It's also going to be discussed, as Cindy mentioned, in the communications and engagement meeting tomorrow. But I wanted it to open it up as a public and open discussion from all of us council members of what you think our next steps as a council should be. Cynthia?
Well, just having been in a couple of committee meetings, and having, my eyes opened to how much of the things that our school is legally required to do, we actually cannot do without a principal in the building. I mean, we're getting to a point where it's mid-February. We have a CIWP plan, we have principal evaluations, we have budget questions. And as far as I can tell, we can't actually take any action on any of those without an actual principal in the building. And I feel like it's important to point that out to CPS. And that's all I can say politely.
Thank you, Cynthia. I did want to say that the chief and AIC Carey and Principal Moore, they obviously work together every day. And there's things that the network, since we're under the network, there's things the network, meaning Chief Asaf and her team, can help us and can decide and can authorize for our school to go on every day. But that shouldn't be the way, you know? So I did want to clarify that, because I have asked that specific question to the chief, and she's here. She can vouch to that if we need something, like, it can't be, oh, we have to wait because our sitting principal is on leave and we don't get the information on until when that leave is. We don't get information on what type of leave it is. But we have kids in our school and staff in our school every day. So we can't pause. We can't take leaves. So that's part of, like, at this point, I think that's why we need to be a little bit more direct. I saw Miss Holbert.
Of course, I was crying in the background. I don't have a master plan except to say that I support what you're saying. And as a teacher, and frankly, one who's stuck around when a lot left in the past year or two, I agree. And I think as it relates to the enrollment and as it relates to new curriculum with math and potential new curriculum being discussed with literacy, we need a principal. And AIC Carey has been lovely, but I think she would admit that she didn't she didn't mean to take on this role to the length that it is, and she said that she'll stick around as long as she needs to, but she was retired. This is not this is not her school. She's doing us a really, really good solid. And AP Moore obviously has stepped up to the plate and is lovely, and everyone supports her, and we appreciate that as well. But that's, we need a true principal leader of the school. And I think Nick and others can attest to how time consuming it was to pick Principal Gibson. And unfortunately it did not go the way we want. So to spend the time to find another one, which we'd have to do sooner rather than later for next school year. We spent all of our past summer. So just thinking about having to spend all of this coming summer is daunting. And so I'm happy to put any of that emotion in a professional way to the CEO and speak from a teacher perspective if you need. So I support, whatever we need to do next. What perhaps doesn't make sense to go to a board meeting. Maybe our emails are falling on deaf ears at some point. To put it out there.
Thank you, Ms. Albert.
There's Paw Patrol.
I actually have Board of Education office hours tomorrow. We want one of the board members. It's the second time I've had that. The past member is no longer a member, so this is the new member. And I'm basically saying the same thing we're talking about here. But I do think, and I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but it's public, that everyone should ask for office hours for the Board of Education, because I'm watching all the board meetings. What gets noted and talked about is when a lot of people reach out, a lot of people. And if that's, at this point, whatever it takes, like I'm sure I probably blocked them some CPS emails by this point. But whatever it takes. Mr. Hall?
Thank you. I will echo Ms. Holbert's point. Having gone through, and Cindy and Sarah, having gone through the process of hiring a principal, it is very lengthy, it is time consuming, and we want as much time as possible. So if that's what we're going to have to do, it would be nice to know. What I would like from CPS are some answers, or what is their long-term plan with the leave? In my mind, if someone is on an extended leave, you should get a resident principal, not a AIC, which again, Principal Carey is doing a wonderful job working with our staff and administration, but you can't lead a school when you're only there 3 days a week. And it's just, what's the long-term plan? Because as Principal Carey said herself, she doesn't want to be there forever. She had retired. She has come back. So really, what's the plan? If it's a leave, what is the plan from CPS? What will they provide us?
May?
Hi. I'm an 8th grader, and I think that I just want to kind of echo what everyone's feelings are and just say that it's been kind of really hard this year. And for middle schoolers and especially 8th graders, knowing that we didn't have a principal this year, or we won't have a principal when we graduate because of this long process. And I hear from a lot of students just asking me questions, being like, do we have a principal? Is she gone? Is she coming back? And because I'm on the LSC, they expect me to know these things. But honestly, I'm just as confused as everyone else. Like, I don't know what the plan is for CPS, and I'm kind of asking, what their plan is, what this leave is all about, and stuff like that. It's just been really stressful and kind of confusing because there's decisions that can't be made without a principal, and yeah, just very stressful and confusing year so far.
Thank you, May. Sarah? You're muted, Sarah.
I too echo what has been shared and deeply resonate with what May has shared about how this has impacted our students more particularly, right? Because this is what school is about. And putting together all of what has been shared, to me, it really I wonder if thinking about a campaign, how can we give folks some tools or talking points, and when we do ask for those office hours, or we do attend a board meeting, or when we do have those questions, can we create some universal language for folks to have meaningful conversations and kind of put a full court press in play around getting some responses so that we have the right types of supports for our school.
Thank you, Sarah. I don't know if Cindy, Rob, Michael. Yes, Cindy.
I'm just curious, Chief Asaf, what is your communication with CPS in regarding this leave? What do you know?
Good evening. So basically, they are all related to labor and talent and HR policies. And what somebody who works for the Board of Education is allowed in terms of due process, and when they're on leave, they're obviously protected by all kinds of labor laws. When I know that the LSC chair reaches out to central office requesting an update, I contact different departments trying to get an answer, and eventually they reply. It is very difficult because the amount of information is very, very limited, and it's information that only a few people have inside the district. We support schools at the networks. We're mainly supporting principals and the instruction that takes place within the school with our own teams. We link the schools with the other departments in the different content areas and the different services that the district provides. So this is basically very difficult for me too, as your chief, as the chief of schools for Network 4, knowing that you are still waiting to hear a resolution of your petition. It's very difficult, and there is absolute. I do not know anything else other than the same thing you would know. They're waiting. They're making the decisions based on policy, based on how they treat these different cases. I hope that I know that doesn't answer you fully, but it is what I can share with you.
It, I wanted to add to that legally, um, there is a sitting principal. When any person, like if there's an ongoing investigation, at this point, the investigation be finished. Maybe it's finished. Like we don't know. Maybe it's finished, but because there is a leave happening, like an act, everything pauses. No decision can be taken when there's a leave. It's technicalities, legal stuff. But honestly, at this point, there could be an end to the investigation, but they can't do anything because there's like this pause that a leave creates according to their policies and everything. Maybe it's not finished and they can't do anything because there is a leave. So um, we obviously don't get any additional information that what the network district gets. Um, so we don't know, as I said, what type of leave, because there's different types of leaves and requirements for each leave and time frames for each different leaves. But at this point, we don't know, which makes it even worse because it's more of a limbo because we know certain types of leaves, it's this maximum time, others are different. So we don't know. That's the main concern because as Cindy mentioned, right now we have to deal with so many things. Enrollment, we want more people, we want to have more families join our wonderful community. But one of the questions, and it's out there so everyone knows, one of the questions is, did you solve the situation with your principal? The answer is no. So that would make anyone feel like, well, I'm not sure, like, if I want to send my kids to a school that doesn't have like a formal principal or acting principal at the moment. So it impacts everything. The student's daily life, as May mentioned, as Sarah also said, the staff, um, you can imagine what it does to the staff. And again, this is not saying, I think we're all in agreement that AIC Carey and AP Moran are an amazing team. They've done wonders. But our staff, our students, everyone deserve like the stability of knowing this is our leader Monday through Friday or 7 days a week. Honestly, this is the leader of our school. This is the head of the team. So I think that's why we can't afford to start another year like this. And that is, I think, the main thing we should convey. Not that we haven't done that multiple times, but at this point, numbers, CPS loves numbers. So numbers about enrollment, about like we can't afford to lose other staff members, which we couldn't blame them if that's the decision they made. So that's why I think our strategy now has to be a little bit, I don't want to say less peaceful because it can be peaceful and respectful, but um, more, I don't know, targeted, you know. Cindy, I don't know if you wanted to add something.
I just wondered, in terms of our numbers, yes, taking CPS office hours for sure, but what prevents us from contacting, whoever just dealing with the labor laws or
Nothing. You can contact anyone. Trust me. We the thing is we get like generic answers. There's nothing they can. There's no information they can give us, and
Is there something legally stopping them from just telling us the lengths of her leave?
yeah, they can't inform that legally. Like that's privacy issues. Obviously, CPS HR knows, but they can't inform like us. Mr. Hall?
I think Michael was before me.
Can't see everyone. Michael.
Yeah, no worries. So I kind of had two thoughts. I almost feel like this issue has two parts to it. I mean, one is the leave part, and the leave part to me means you have a right to return to a job and to return to a paycheck. And then there's another part of this question, which is like about being the principal of the school. So I'd be very interested, especially with your comment about CPS loving numbers, either at a board meeting or during office hours. I know I personally will have difficulty doing that anytime soon, but would hope to hop on that train also. Just to understand if we as an LSC were to do something that was more definitive about how we're not going to be renewing the contract, even though that's not a decision point at the moment, I don't think. If we were to somehow make that formalized or accelerate that decision process, does that kind of change the calculus for CPS with the leave? Like they might be required to have her come back and pay out a contract, or put her as a teaching job with a principal salary or whatever it is. But there's lots of numerical options and options that I think work that don't. I guess basically I see this as a negotiation, and it seems like there's a lot of options that aren't going to cost more than what they have to spend anyway. And if there's fear of litigation, maybe that's a big driver. Like, are there things that we can do, if renewing the contract is a big one. Is there something that we can do as an LSC that they could tell us that we could do to help kind of shut down those risks for them? You know, maybe if we come at it a little more cost benefit, if that would help, be interested to know.
I am going to let the chief answer this question.
I wish I had an answer. I do not believe that the Board of Education would I do not know how to answer that question. I do not think that I think they're going to do everything they need to do to follow policy. If there are options, they will definitely share them. But I don't believe that there. I mean, you can always suggest it, but I do not believe that there's room for going outside what they would do for anyone else. Is what I'm trying to say. And what they do for everyone else is they're very careful about following labor laws and following due process protocols. That's pretty much what I can share, what I know.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Michael, I could add to that I have asked about maybe not options, but what things that maybe we could do. And the answer, like the general answer, has been that she's the sitting principal and there's a contract for 4 years. Mr. Hall?
I guess either, or maybe Dr. Asaf, and I'm pretty sure I might not get a clear answer or how much you can tell us. So from what you said, Eliana, because we're thinking of making these demands to CPS and kind of being more explicit with, okay, this needs to be resolved. Is there no recourse that can be taken while someone is on a leave? Like, is that a fact? Because in that case, we can ask everything we want. If nothing can be done while that person is on leave, we have no choice but to wait till that leave ends, right? Or are there options CPS can take? I don't know what you can share, Dr. Asaf, sorry.
Oh, so I do not know. That is the absolute truth. Like, there are, since CPS is such a humongous district, and we have in a smaller district, I would assume I would have a closer, I'd be in closer proximity to what is going on internally. There's absolutely no way for me to know if there are certain leaves and certain requests that can be executed during a leave. I do not know if one leave trumps another leave, if there's a process in place and that process, let's say, is completed. I do not know if they would execute on the outcome of that process while the person is on leave. I do not know. And so principals fall into one category, then teachers fall into a different category depending on their unions, depending on contracts that they have with their respective unions and things like that. But I know that they're very careful about what I just said, protecting the rights of the individual, ensuring due process, and following policy as they have it written. So I'm so sorry to be so circular about it, but I just I don't see any other way of them proceeding.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Asaf. So as an LSC, Eliana, can is there a way for us to go about finding out who does know? Like is that whoever's at the top? Like just to get an answer of like, can anything be done or not? Would be so we're not getting our hopes up or not. Like just it's hard to proceed when we have so many questions. But I also
Yeah,
get the whole confidentiality and legal stuff.
there's two things in here. Like we can formally ask all these questions and actually give them options, because I do believe like they could give us a resident principal, but they're saying that no. um I would like that answer to be like written, like why, like explain why in our case no, but in another school that had a situation where the principal was removed immediately, and they could figure it out immediately. um but there's also the fact that we should, even if we don't get responses immediately, for the record and for our process and for the transparency of our LSC, this is something that we need to do, and or I would advise that we do, um, for it to be in our record, for whatever happens. This is why it happened, and this is the steps the LSC took for whatever happens. Everything has to be documented as they do, because that's the reason they're not acting, because they know there's going to be repercussions either way. Uh, so it's that two things. Like it's like even if we don't get answers or the at the moment, or the answers we are expecting, it has to be there. Like that's why we've sent like more than 50 emails, all the letters, all the communications, and everything. But also, our last response came from CPS Legal. They didn't come from CEO Martinez. So my train of thought is asking specifically, even if we know that he can't answer that or he won't, because he's the head of CPS Legal. What is the leave? What alternatives do we have as a school? Can we ask? I'm asking for, specifically for a resident principal, explaining that you can't pick a principal in 2 weeks if we are eventually going to have to pick or select another principal, and that we can't, I mean, we don't deserve, but we can't start a new year without a principal. So asking all the questions of the things we've all asked before, but formally to the legal department, because they will either reply a generic reply that they can't say, but these things they can answer because they can give us general answers of what the policy is. Because as Chief Asaf said, um, there are unions involved here. So there's other aspects that CPS has to consider. The principals have a union too. So um, all of this, my as I said, my train of thought is replying to CPS Legal now, because that's the last reply we got as an LSC or as a community. Yes, Chief Asaf.
Thank you, Liana. So, just to clarify a couple of things, there are different types of administrators when it comes to the principal position. So, yes, I know that you probably have been hearing a lot, you as an LSC or the LSC Tubman at the time offered the contract to the individual, and so that's binding. And you also exercise your right to request to the CEO for removal, and that was received. And the response to you was that there was going to be one, support to the school, and two, an investigation. That's what I remember, right? And obviously this has taken a longer than anybody wanted to. So this is how the district responds to a situation like this. The principal was in the seat. This is the contract principal. Um, the principal had to take a leave or decided to take a leave, took the leave, and so other things happened because of the leave. Um, in terms of what gets executed, what can be done, and what gets put on hold. Okay, so that we know that. Now, in terms of covering a school, a resident principal could not be placed in your school because usually a resident principal, in the way CPS uses the term, is for an educator with a principal who is part of a program, has a principal license by the state, and is in the process of getting their practicum. So resident principals are under a contract principal learning how to be principals, or having, their practicum, it's like student teaching but for principals, and it lasts a year, and it's a program that's very successful. A lot of very good school administrators come out of those programs. So that's not an option for you. You couldn't have somebody there as as a resident principal. What you could have, but not really, or what I think you're thinking of, is an interim principal. Now, an interim principal cannot be placed if there's a contract principal. That's your catch 22. So basically, what you can have is what you already have, which is an administrator in charge, which is usually a retired principal like Principal Carey. They're usually in the school the full week. They're usually there all the time. But given that we found Principal Carey, we didn't think it was going to take this long, and she was not ready to commit to a full week after retiring from her own school. In a lot of places, an administrator in charge in a lot of the schools, they're there for a month, 8 weeks. They're not usually not for very extended periods of time. These are just special circumstances and unfortunate special circumstances. If you had an interim principal, it would be somebody with a principal license who is not the contract principal, but who could hold the school until you select the new principal. Now, interim principals, when we place them, we place interim principals in schools where we feel that person might have a good chance of securing a contract, because we don't want a lot of change for the school. If everybody's in agreement that, especially when the principal, changes too much, it slows things down in the school. It's not favorable. So basically, you have at this moment what the district offers when there is a sitting principal that holds the contract. And we could try to get another administrator in charge that would be there five days a week, but I think that would be not a good idea. Maybe more detrimental than helpful at this time.
Mhm. Thank you, Chief. Sarah, I don't know if you had your hand up.
No, I just was appreciative of the breakdown of how that works. Thank you.
Cindy?
Sorry, I'm running to pick the boys up from wrestling. I just, it's stating the obvious, but we have one person, one single person that is holding an entire school community like hostage. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, and namely the students. It, so she's protected, yes, and yes, those are things are in place because those are necessary things. But who's protecting the kids? Who is supporting and backing our staff? How did we end up? And she is lovely, fantastic. But how did we end up with a part-time interim principal? Like I'm gonna say this out loud. I'm taking it personally. Like, do we not deserve better? Or is that what CPS is telling us? Is that what you're telling us, that we don't deserve better? It's absurd at this point.
Thank you, Cindy. Um, yeah, we do deserve more. Um, okay. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything. My feeling is, even with the excellent breakdown that Chief of Staff gave us, I would ask the questions anyway. Knowing um, the requirements for A, B, or C to happen, um, just for them to know that, again, this is, as the chief said, an unfortunate circumstance. They're different. Um, I I don't know, Chief, if there's been another case that you know of like this long time of a school being without a formal principal. Maybe it has happened for other circumstances, but I mean, as Cindy said, it's absurd at this point. Cynthia?
Yeah, I didn't expect to come out of this discussion feeling completely deflated, but I mean, I just feel like we are over a barrel. Like, it sounds like there's literally nothing that we could do that could, like, we're not even in a spot where we could start a search for a new principal. And it sounds like we won't be for months, but we don't know how many months. Um, it's distressing to me that there isn't a position that resident principal is one thing and administrator in charge is another thing. But is there, I mean, maybe there needs to be, this seems to be a pretty unique circumstance, but an acting principal. Like, is there a box somewhere that we can check so that lovely Principal Carey and lovely AP Moore can do some of the things that our school needs to do to continue and function? um because right now we're we're absolutely in limbo indefinitely with no information and no way to do anything bureaucratic or helpful um for any of our responsibilities, and it's ridiculous. Sorry, I lost it there.
Thank you, Cynthia. Sarah? You're muted.
I understand there's some work being done in the communications committee. I mean, is there? I mean, do we? How can we? I guess the question for me is, how can we have some dedicated time? You know, to really either put some tools together, some strategies together about next steps, or is it a committee who takes this up as a collective? You know, you know, having this conversation in the LSC meeting is definitely fruitful, but then also there's ideally some next steps or some actions that can be taken that we can support the whole school community around this issue, because we know it impacts all. So just curious if we can, maybe utilize a current committee to help organize, or um, if there's some discernible um, times and thought that we can dedicate around next steps here as a collective body.
Yeah, Sarah. Part of like the agenda for the Communications and Engagement Committee meeting that's happening tomorrow is basically this. talking about like the next steps as a school. But in that meeting, the hope is to get like some like the work started of what would be the formal response, but we have to discuss it as a council and vote for us to like prepare that formal communication coming from the council. um, Even when the communications and engagement committee will be the one kind of like um, getting everything together, like our timeline. Um, since this would be sent to CPS Legal now, obviously with copy to CO Martinez, but to the one who replied to us, um, it's good to have like they have this obviously, but to give them our timeline, what we've done, uh, and all of these asks and how we are feeling. But I would like for that to include how staff is feeling. So I know Ms. Holbert, and I'll ask for help publicly to Mr. Hall and Ms. Holbert in terms of gathering the thoughts and feelings of the staff so we can include it there. May, oh yeah, May is here. I want your help also in gathering the thoughts and feelings of our students. As you perfectly stated before, try to put together something related to students. And then we'll work on how our community, how our parents are feeling. So if anyone is here that wants to share how they're feeling, to be included in that huge communication that is going to be prepared, please send it to the LSC email so we can have it to be included. So I think it's important to have all the perspectives. I don't know if we also want to um, include, I don't want to put them in the spot, like how our admin is feeling about the situation. I know that's harder, but with staff, students, and community parents, caregivers, I think it would give a very complete perspective of the reality. You know, we're doing this. And again, we've said it before, the staff is amazing. Our admin is amazing in terms of like our day to day, because our kids are going in there, they're happy, everything's like, but they deserve better. You know, the staff, the kids, we as parents and caregivers deserve better. So I think it's important to have all those voices. So I ask, as I said, Mr. Hall and Ms. Holbert, if you could help with the staff. May, if you could help with the students. Um, Obviously, um, higher grades will be more eloquent in what they're feeling, but we can gather also through the teachers how if there's any any thoughts or feelings from like lower grades, and then us as as community and parents and caregivers also give our perspective. I don't know if all of you are okay with this. So after the discussion, my motion would be to have the communications and engagement committee of our LSC work on a formal response to CPS legal about the current state of our school.
I second the motion.
Any further discussion about this? Rob, did you raise your hand? Oh, sorry. Okay, we vote. Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Holbert? I don't see her. Lori's not here. Cynthia?
I'm here. Yeah,
Oh.
I'm multitasking now. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Cynthia?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Ms. Brooks? Michael?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Principal Gibson? May?
Yes.
And it's a yes for me too. So the LSC has formally voted to start a formal reply to CPS Legal from our last communication regarding the situation with our sitting principal. Our next point on the agenda is another public participation, but we don't have any other person signed up. Next would be action items and next steps. Any action items or next steps you want to add? Michael?
I'd like to just follow up on one of the public participation comments and try to get some of the data that we saw today broken out in more detail. And I'd really like to keep hammering on my question about comparisons before and after the pandemic, and I just try to get a better understanding of like what's missing. It just feels like something's missing, and I just want to get a better sense of like what that is, and get that through the test scores.
Perfect. So it would be the breakdown of the data by grade level, and then the other.
Yeah, that's really the ask. I just giving some context.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, Sarah? Muted.
I would add on to Michael and even ask for a further breakdown if we can get any insight around age, gender, ethnicity. It's so helpful, especially for families to kind of understand how to lead and provide those supports, and just ask for how we can really understand those gaps and where we can lean in to support that work.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other? So our next point on the agenda is our next regular virtual meeting is March 8th, 2023. Before we adjourn, I do want to say that with the Communications and Engagement Committee that is meeting tomorrow to start to put this communication that we all agreed upon for CPS, there again, anyone who wants to provide any inside thought question, please send it to the LSC so we can include it in our formal reply to CPS. And also, I did want to mention that LSC Relations sent out an email saying that the emergency declaration is ending, I believe, in end of May. So meetings are going to start being in person, I think, starting June or July. I don't have it in front of me right now, but just so you have that at the top of your mind. Again, our next regular virtual meeting is March 8th, 2023. I motion then to adjourn our meeting.
I second.
Any discussion? We vote. Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Holbert?
Yes.
Lori? Cynthia? Cynthia?
Sorry, I was trying to say, so yes, I agree.
Thank you. Cindy?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Ms. Brooks? Michael?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Principal Gibson? May?
Yes.
And it's a yes for me too. So meeting is adjourned at 8:20 p.m. Thank you everyone who joined us and have a great night.